Well, good afternoon. This is David Friedman and Dave Berkus for TCA Crossroads, where entrepreneurs and investors connect. And how are you today, Dave? The beginning of 2026.
And I'm looking forward to a great year, and I'm doing great, and it is great, and the weather is great. Don't know what else to say, David, except we're both dressed in black, and that certainly is no sign of the future, I hope.
Well, yes and no, but you have that halo around your neck, that red angel halo, because you're the super angel and I'm only a mini angel. I feel like Santa and the elf. I feel like the elf.
How nice. But it's actually a sweater about a biplane. But that's okay. That's for another future day. I flew for a lot
I'm
of
not going
years.
to make any comments about the biplane and your relationship with the Wright brothers. That's a
Yes,
different
sir.
story.
That's about how old I am. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present to you our presenter today, which is a person you may or may not know well. His name is David Friedman. And I have seen what he's about to talk about, and I really would like you to pay attention. It is really worthwhile. David?
Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to bring on the slide. I've done this now for about 5 years. Every beginning of the year, I go through the trends and figure out what we need to do, because as Wayne Gretzky said, you skate to where the puck is going, not to where it's been. So that's the reason why Wayne Gretzky is, on the cover sheet. And what I want to talk about is a new paradigm for investors and entrepreneurs to think about in the way when they present their deals and their technologies and businesses. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I'll touch it. We'll go on to that in a different presentation. But the focus on this will be trends and directions for investing success. Because when we invest in a deal, it's not for the return today, it's an investment for the return in 3, 4, 5, and unfortunately many more years than that. That's fair?
Sure is. Go right ahead.
And interrupt me when you want. We can just chat on a subject. But you've touched on this before, and we've had guests coming on, and lots of things have changed since 2025. Structural shifts in the deployment of new capital. We're seeing much more on safe notes. We may be seeing something like private debt. We may be seeing dividend licensing type agreements, and that goes into this concept called the quad map. But we're also seeing a lot of new early stage investors, many younger people, many coming out of the corporate world, not necessarily the startup world, and they have different perspectives and attitudes in terms of what they want to invest in and the risk level. We have seen a continuation of AI, new materials and infrastructure. They're now real. They're not speculative as they were a few years ago. And when we go through the presentation, you'll see how I structured it. I'll talk about some of these companies, or at least mention them.
51% of all invested capital for private equity and angels went into AI in 2025. Is that amazing?
I think it makes sense. I mean, it's like the internet was back in 2001, 2002. At that time, everyone went with, well, my name is pets.com or chewy.com or whatever.com or toothbrushes.com. And the evaluations just, skyrocketed. And eventually it became, okay, the internet's just part and parcel of any business today, which it is. You're going to see that same come true with AI, I think.
Your presentation today is going to talk about looking into the future and all the other things beyond AI or that incorporate AI. I think we all ought to just acknowledge the fact that we have overinvested in tools and processes and infrastructure already. And that may not be where the money is in the next couple of years. And you're going to show us some of those areas where the money could be going.
Show me the money. This is from Tom Cruise. Hopefully we see that. So to go on with this one, again, exit timelines are longer and less predictable. And some of the newer investors want shorter timelines and more predictability, less risk. And then the concept is structure matters more than ever. We're seeing convertible notes, safes, and the equity. Those are the standbys that we've always had, but we're now seeing potentials for licensing, private debt, revenue share, and hybrids, where you have convertible notes, you have a revenue floor, you have triggers, and you have debts, and you have warrants. So there's a lot more flexibility that we would have as early stage investors than we would believe we have if we just focus on the three main things that we've seen over the last many, many years. Just point that out. So there is an investment continuum. There's market maturity and value capture and speed. And I'll explain that by looking at the squad map. Not all great returns require long duration equity. Just think about this. A 10x return, which sounds like the standard of what angels want, in 10 years equates to a 23% IRR. But what happens if I were to get a 40% return on a deal that is not necessarily the standard angel fare? Maybe it's a real estate investment, maybe it's private debt, but gives me an ARR of 40%. I get some dividends or interest, and I get the appreciation. Might be more beneficial and might be better for the overall portfolio by having that kind of diversity. Now, I just want to point out, structure is how angels control time. It's not just the traditional safe, convertible, or preferred equity. There are other structures that enable us to manage risk and control the time of exit. And I just want to point that out in a concept called this quad map. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, by the way, but to look at this startup investment quad, we'll look at two axes. One is called market maturity. The other one's called value capture speed. And there are four quadrants. They require different tools, different kinds of deal structures, different risks. I'm just going to point that out at this point. And just for visualization, we look at these quad maps. Quad one is engineered returns, and I'll cover what they are, and you'll see that. I actually will look at the trends and try to map them to the squad map. So if anyone's listening, draw out the squad map and you can actually map these deals, and it's pretty interesting.
This quad map, and you have another one coming in a while, both give us a real framework from which to both analyze and discuss. And you spent some time on this, and I think it's very well done.
Well, I appreciate that. Coming from you, I really appreciate it. Now I'm getting the chills, actually.
Oh, shucks.
So the second one, we hear this a lot. There are better mousetraps. There's a way you do things today, and there's a better mousetrap. But when the entrepreneurs come in, they say we should get X millions of dollars in valuation, but it doesn't give you this discontinuous transformational innovation that will give us those high returns over the long run. Quad three is science driven. These are the very, very early stage technology driven, technology transfer coming out of the universities that are very, very early stage, but have extraordinarily high potential for significant returns. These would be things like the original GPU chips, or when Qualcomm was coming out with their CDMA versus the standard of TDMA at the time, and a lot of the medical device, medical technologies, material science comes out of the science driven. And I left Q2 what I call puck, skate to where the puck is going, and early monetization, which is the normal where the angels have invested in. These have some momentum, many energy in terms of moving towards monetization and early traction and early revenue. But I just want to point it out. So we'll go through the next series of slides, and we can put these into the different quadrants, which is what I'm trying to do, and give you some examples. So we'll talk about hot technologies and markets. I'm seeing a continuation from 2025. There are new trends in markets and technologies. And then the key in my mind from an angel point of view, or an early stage investor, I don't even want to use the word angel anymore, because I think that's passe, because angels focus on quad two. I think the TCA Venture Group should look at all four, and that balances the portfolio and the risk structure.
Well done. I agree with that. And it certainly does map with two things. Angel returns have taken longer to get than originally thought, and the amounts have been a little lower than people originally had calculated. And having this kind of flexibility is certainly a evolution that is late in coming.
So I'm going to go now with that segue, map the trends into quadrants. And the first one we're going to talk about is AI agents. But AI agents and workflow, these are systems that do the work, not just analyze it. If it's only analysis, it won't give us the highest return. So it has to do something more. This is where you see things like agentic AI come in with this decision making. This is embedded in workflows. You have an identified budget owner, early monetization. It's quadrant 2, so that one tracks quite well. And the use cases are software that execute multi-stage business processes end-to-end using agentic AI or factory automation. Again, systems that do the work. And there's some examples. One is a company called Cognition, another one is Adept, another one is Airway. Airway basically takes cameras and sensors, puts them on a truck, uses AI to map out imperfections in roadways. Could be used by the road people in a state, but their initial implementation is going to be for airports, and they have some contracts with defense contractors or with Air Force bases. You also have Cognition, which is software that actually writes the bugs and does quality control of the software. So I just wanted to point out a couple. I'm not going to go into depth on these, but I mention these companies so people can say, let me look up Cognition or Adept or Airway. Notice all of these three have AI somewhere in the name. In fact, Airway has AI twice, so it must be really important. Just want to point that out to you. The next one is energy and grid software. Now, this is mostly quadrant 2, but it could be some really early, it could be quadrant 1 as well, which is really early stage. The grid is now software defined. That's a nature of the beast. We're seeing everything becoming software oriented. You want to be able to monetize constraints. For example, how do I sell to a utility that is controlling traffic lights? Or road routing, maybe for emergency. It's like when I was watching Person of Interest years ago, you had somebody sitting in a computer system rerouting it so that the good guy can get to the bad guys real quick. Those things are becoming reality. So you see people, infrastructure buyers, utilities, airports, municipal structures, all buying these use cases of managing congestion, managing load, looking at reliability, doing early stage maintenance, managing risk, and even the next generation of yield management, for example, for air travel. Examples, Smart Signals, which used to be a company that we invested in early on, where they control the traffic lights, if you recall, for emergency vehicles to get to the emergency quicker. I think that may have been a little early at that stage, but
way early.
Way early, yeah. It reminds me of my days in VSATs from '82 and finally putting them into place in 2005, a little later than normal.
Let me kind of clarify whether we are showing things in what you think to be the order of when they're going to reveal themselves, or whether you're doing this arbitrarily.
Yeah, I should have put them in order. I did not. I did not put which one is the most critical first, or the one that has the highest potential. So it's my opinion of the top 10 trends, and it's sort of like I mixed them up in a mixing bowl and just picked them out. There's no logical reason why I did it this way. It just came out that way.
I assume that you were doing this as how they will reveal themselves in order to show us which ones we invest in first. And my answer would have been robotics should have been second. So I was wrong. We'll wait for you to get to robotics.
Okay, well, let me go to a different one that I think would be a really cool thing. It's called nuclear adjacent technologies. And this one, Q2 is where we'll normally invest, and that's like the picks and shovels, and think about it as analogous to oil field services to drilling companies. And Q3, which are basically small micro nuclear reactors. You're going to find that the use cases are around safety, monitoring, compliance, fuel simulation. There's a lot of government leverage. Strategic buyers will certainly dominate the exits here. You'll find people like Halliburton, maybe buying some of these nuclear adjacent technologies. There's already exit potential, but they're also could be used by the giant data centers and hyperscalers. Look at the examples I put down. Oklo, which is a public company, but I decided to put it down because it's really interesting. And my friends and I have had discussions about them. And they have the small nuclear reactors, which are going to be important as we move more into AI and data center type opportunities. You need significant electricity that can't be handled by the basic grid itself.
Right.
Or you have radiant nuclear, which are basically, it's a DoD-driven nuclear micro reactors. There's also Atomic Canyon, which is unique nuclear plant efficiency, analysis. So again, there's this whole area of nuclear, and I separated it from climate for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is these big things, these nuclear plants put out steam into the environment, but whatever. The next one, which I happen to love because this is where I invest about 80% of my money, seems to be precision medicine infrastructure. It's again standard quadrant for the startups. In fact, if you look at our deals over the last several years, we have significant amount of money in medical device, and now those things are being infused by AI. Clinical decision support, workflow software for diagnostics and treatment. We've seen, for example, an AI system that will, using your camera on your iPhone, can scan your face and send it upstream into an AI system, and it can tell you what the lesions on your face look like, or if they're good, bad, or ugly, or really bad. There's a lot of precision medicine also will include things relating to trial support, because it's a lot of work, as you know, in getting a new medicine to market, a new molecule, and new treatment modalities. It has to go through the FDA. This is very clearly reimbursement driven, and that's where the monetization takes place. If there's an ability to get it reimbursed, it will take front and center, because that's the way the medical system works today. My use case is called Jiminy Cricket. I use Jiminy Cricket as the name for my ChatGPT alter ego digital twin, but it's the third party alter ego and GPS for doctors and patients, so they can use it as a sidekick to help make better decisions. It's not turning it over to these AI systems, but it's used where the doctor can then confirm, deny, or have a dialogue with the system to make sure it is the best for the patient. Examples, SpinMed, which is a company that's a startup within the Orange County ecosystem that helps match patients with Alzheimer's trials. Viz AI, which is clinical alerts using FDA-cleared algorithms for imaging in real time. Scribble, which transcribes doctor notes from voice. And Path AI, it's basically AI assisted diagnosis. So you see a lot of these areas. Yeah, go.
David, I think you're missing the one that I thought was the most important, even though it may not be the first. And there's a lot of money going into genetic engineering using AI and gene splicing to help individuals that happen to be inheriting defective genes. And there is so much money, maybe not in the angel world, going into that. It should be one on your slide as well.
It's funny. Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Dave. I'll make that change going forward, but you're correct. We've actually seen a couple of these new modalities, new types of molecules, gene splicing using CRISPR. They probably would be in that lower left-hand quadrant, and more in terms of the real early stage.
That's true.
So, but you're absolutely correct. So I'll make that change going forward. Good point. Next one is advanced material science. Not a bad segue from what you just said. These are next generation materials, things like carbon fiber, Gorilla Glass. But a lot of it has to do with battery and battery safety technologies, because batteries are becoming so dominant for everything.
Right.
In this case, the materials are really a single application focus. I'll show you why I say that. Early OEM engagement, because you're selling to somebody else in scale. There are certainly licensing paths. That's why this fits into an interesting different structure for deals. The use cases are data centers, earthquake, shaking, or the ability to use materials to reduce earthquake shaking in data centers or in buildings itself in those earthquake zones. And of course, there's battery anodes. So you have companies like Metaseismic, which does the shaking, materials to reduce shaking. You have Luminuity, which is optical technology to make it easier to discern things, particularly in the medical arena, but also in the DoD arena. You have Scylla Nanotech, which changes the anode technology, and it's advanced silicon based to replace graphite. So pretty interesting material science. It's not normally something I think many of the angels or early stage investors would invest in, but certainly it's Q2, and many of the real early stuff is in Q3.
Well stated,
so, yeah.
and Q2 is right. It is too early
Yeah.
for early stage investors, but great for knowledge.
All right, number 6, industrial AI and robotics. Q2 for new stuff, Q4 for established. So you're seeing a lot of the robotics actually take place. I believe at the CES that happened during the week of January 6th, they actually have humanoid robotics that have character and emotional resilience. We've seen these come into play in a few things, one of which is for home use. Another one is, go get my beer out of the refrigerator instead of using the dog for Budweiser, for example. Another one is for companionship, and we've seen these for even robotically AI-oriented robotic dogs and pets, to keep older people and people with Alzheimer's, comfortable, sort of like, comfort pets.
Interrupt just long enough to say that I watched the keynote from the combination of Boston Dynamics and Hyundai. Hyundai bought Boston Dynamics. Hyundai has ordered 15,000 humanoid robots, and they plan to use them in training for the first year, and by 2027, put them on the factory floor. And that's really interesting because these are humanoid robotics, not the kind that are just doing, the kind of robotic work we've seen on the line before. So it is something that is a dramatic future for us. And I want to make one more comment before you go on. Q2, Q3, Q4, for those who are watching and listening, don't confuse that with quarters of this next year. This is his quadrants. And if you go back and refer to that quadrant list, you'll be able to understand what he's saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. We have to remind people, I'm not predicting Q2 this year. It's going to be a massive explosion of these things, but you never know. But let me give you a few examples. Expert Scale. This is a company that's come into TCA. In fact, Expert Scale, Ritual Ads, OmniMed, all were companies that are presented to TCA. Expert Scale has a digital twin. Take a lawyer, take all the experience the lawyer has, make that a digital twin online, so I can call up the digital twin and get advice at a fraction of the cost that it would cost me for the lawyer at $1,000 an hour. I pay $100 an hour. But you can also see the applicability in customer service, as well as keeping the skill set and the intelligence of retirees within the company, because when they leave, they take all their expertise with them. Now I can use this Expert Scale to codify and to memorialize that expertise and stay within the company. Ritual Ads, Jethro's company out of Pasadena, which uses a combination of humans plus AI backgrounds to develop ads much quicker. He was on TV, for example, for an angel reese ad for, I forgot the name of the company, may have been, I don't want to say the wrong company, but it was one of the sports companies. But the ad was produced at significantly lower costs and much faster. OmniMed, which is a smart OR capturing data to improve surgical efficiency. And then there's a Covariant, which is basically develops AI for robots, which is what you were talking about. But lots of opportunity in this area. And I think what you're going to see is very specialized AI agents, and they're going to be the ones that are going to take root and show a lot of return. If you had a platform that enabled you to develop multiple AI agents or in mass, I think that would be the kind of company that I would look at. sort of like developing a variety of picks and shovels. Next one, which is one of my favorites, is cybersecurity, having come out of the cybersecurity market years ago. Q4, most deals you're seeing, there's a lot of cyber out there today, and most of the things are better mousetraps. But there are several in Q2 that are most prone, are very particularly important to the angel community or the startup community. And that's using agentic control or looking at new attack vectors.
Right.
So again, new attack vectors are coming out because the bad actors are very good at doing this. And we need the systems, including AI, to try to see it ahead of time. It's looking at almost what I used to do is look at the digital DNA of the network itself. AI helps you see that digital DNA faster than a human can, even using some of these systems called SIEMs that enable you to track different metrics on a network. So you can forecast threat vectors without signatures. Signatures are passé. They're useful for a computer, but those are known. What we want to be able to, cyber criminals do things that are not known. So they're non-signature oriented, and that's what we want to pick up with AI, and AI can detect that. There's a lot of platform potential for this, so it can be a platform, and that spawns various AI agents, what I was trying to mention before, in the industrial AI system as well. So the use cases, agentic control over threats used in governance and compliance. Level 6 cybersecurity is a company that came in the other day, and Level 6 basically develops virtual CISOs, or the Chief Information Security Officer, both from a strategy, compliance, governance, as well as from a threat operations detection and management point of view. And then you have Protect AI that protects both AI and machine learning. And just think about this. Somebody's going to come up with an idea to be able to put something in your car, because cars are basically computers. It's basically computers on wheels. Okay, so a car literally is a living room and a computer that is mobile, when you really think about it. And you do not want somebody to take charge of all the Waymo vehicles and the autonomous vehicles running around and therefore running amok. So we got to be a little careful. But this is a big hot area. A lot of intellectual property going into this one. Climate adaptation, it's an old standby. This is infrastructure that assumes climate damage will occur and change will happen. It's non-cyclical. These are companies like groups like insurance companies, government, critical network infrastructure buyers, very interested in this. Use cases are seawalls versus carbon offsets, fire detection, which you lived through the fires last year, as well as a lot of our other members. It would have been neat to have that combination of drone, sensor, satellite to be able to detect the fire early and dispatch. You have water reuse as well. So when you look at companies like Pano AI, that would have been an interesting one for LA County to have used. Of course, it's early detection of wildfires using a combination of sensors, satellites, cellular, and other devices for rapid response. Floodbase looks at floods. Source Global develops a system using AI to pull water out of, literally thin air, which can be used for, off-grid, people off-grid, or even for remote agriculture, or doing agriculture in other desert areas. The next one is only two more. Defense, dual tech use. There are dual revenue streams in this one. That's why I pointed it out. It comes out of defense, migrates to commercial normally. There are a lot of budget tailwinds. There are clear needs to do this with the potential for strategic exits. Just for one case, which you can see in a little picture, it's remote health monitoring, where you can have a drone come over a person in, for example, maybe on a battlefield, take a look at that person, make a prescription of what that person's needs are and send the appropriate medic and equipment to that person. But it also can be used in emergency response by people like FEMA. You also have drone delivery, as well as new novel technologies for oil exploration. I don't remember if you recall back about 15 years ago, there was a company that TCA invested in called Ground Metrics.
Of course.
Again, real early stage. Now with AI, now with the new technologies with drone and everything else, that may become a reality. Maybe it needs to be resurrected. But the examples are pretty clear. Most people know about Anduril, Lucky Palmer, and that one uses sensors and software for the Defense Department that will translate into a commercial opportunity somewhere. You have Astral.us controlling autonomous drone fleets, and there's a lot of drone fleets out there, particularly used in agriculture, also in the military, for positioning their warriors. And then you have a company called Primer, which does data analysis. Think about it as another type of a Palantir type operation. And Palantir came out of the defense mode, if you recall. I remember them when I was in the Valley back doing cybersecurity, and they, along with a company called Centrifuge, were helping us figure out what to do. And then now they're into not only defense, but also commercial, and very successful. The final one I want to point out are what I call engineered IRR deals. These are strictly quadrant one. The return comes from structure, not disruption. These are better mousetraps. I'm not saying they're bad, but it gives you a quicker return, maybe that 40% IRR. And they come in a variety of different genres. There's GPS, there's internet, there's drones, there's cyber, there's satellite, there's logistics, things relating to real estate, cash flows, equipment leasing, royalty streams, private credit, revenue share. These are all the kinds of structures that are probably more appropriate than just pure equity or a convertible note. Use case could be a Carfax for homes. So if I buy a house, which I'm doing down in Georgia, I want to be able to see everything relating to the land, whether or not there's earthquakes, flood, temperature, walkability score to where I want to walk to. But there's a whole bunch of things that I can put into a nice little folder to give the homeowner a good perspective on what they're buying and the advantages and value. Also, obviously, for developers who need this for development, they don't want to develop on a fault line, for example. And companies like this, and these three are basically companies that we've seen at TCA. We've seen Mapsol, which is a GIS information system, tracking system using geomaps. They compete with Esri. They are developing a company called Landwise, which is this package of applications for the developer and for the homeowner. Time Machine, which uses AI for training, doing it better and faster. And Tarim, which uses AI to develop an all-in-one international tariff and movement of goods. So fundamentally, again, each of these fit into the squad map. This is, again, not the quarter of the year, but Q1, which we talked about, is up here. Existing demand, cash liquidity is the key. And then we get into the better mousetraps, science-driven, real early stage, potentially higher returns. Q2, where we basically are today with the early startup investing. And just some implications to conclude for startups and investors. Evaluate deals for different timelines, short to long term. You have to recognize the characteristics that improve the odds of high returns on the assets over time. Long-term multi-baggers versus short-term IRR will be used to balance your portfolio and diversify. It generates returns, but also manages the risk. And that's something that a lot of the angels and early stage investors should look at. And I think a lot of the new investors coming in, I think, want to hear. But the final point I want to point out is you want to match the structure of the deal to market timing and risk. But I know this has been a whirlwind. It's been like talking, probably drinking out of a fire hydrant. But hopefully it gives a perspective on those trends that are really critical for the investors in early stage investing to look at. It's where the puck is going. It'll help focus people to think about the structure needed to make the best deal given the risk and the time frame and the value, and also help the entrepreneur understand how to position their product to an early stage investing group. So I'll turn that over. Any comments, critiques, criticisms?
Well, David, I really have to compliment you, first of all, in doing this in a fashion in which we look at it by quadrants. I had mentioned earlier that I thought it was being done as those things that will reveal themselves in a period of time, and therefore how early we should be investing. You have pretty much incorporated that in your quadrants. I do agree with those items that you've listed. It is really something for us to be able to realize that TCA sees thousands of deals every year. And when David mentioned a few of those, it's because he sits in on the screening sessions, gets a detailed review of these companies, even if we don't end up financing them. And that kind of an overview of understanding what's coming just by watching the entrepreneurs present and how many of them are trying to zero in on what things is an amazing education for the investor. At the same time, we've seen this movie before so many times that we can advise the entrepreneur when they are coming up with an idea that has been presented to us so very many times that it almost becomes boring. And sometimes when an entrepreneur says something that sounds wonderful to us, often in the medical arena, that sounds like curing cancer, we have to be a little careful that when we analyze these, we have to analyze them in depth as to their applicability, not just their interest. David, congratulations. That was a well done performance. So I will take over and say to everybody, thank you for spending the time with us. We hope that this gave you something of an education. It certainly did for me. And to say goodbye for us for this particular podcast, we'll see you on the other side for the next.